again, and today's topic, why Colombian hookers are so important in today's political environment. But before we get to that, the America's Evil Genius World Tour is in full swing. It's underway. Here are some of my upcoming appearances. Well, by now, we certainly have all heard about the recent Secret Service hooker scandal down in Colombia, where there is a kerfuffle over some Secret Service agents getting involved with a lady of the evening, if you will, and over the confusion or the disagreement over the appropriate tab that they were supposed to pay for the prostitute. A Secret Service employee tried to get away with only paying her $40, and she says that the negotiated price was a little bit more than that. I understand this hooker, or, well, I don't know, maybe the Obama administration would rather refer to her as a working single mother, I don't know. But nonetheless, this lady has gone public. She is known out there. Here's a picture of her now that you see on your screen. And, I know you're expecting me to do the typical partisan chastising of the Obama administration over this, but I gotta say this. I gotta give, as grudging as it is for me to do, as tough as it is for me to do, I gotta give them a little bit of credit here. I mean, she ain't too hard on the eyes. What can I say? I mean, she's not unattractive. $40. I've made worse bargains in my life. I mean, not that I have any experience, with hookers or anything like that, but let's face it, I'm a single guy, and I've spent more than $40 on dinner and a show and whatever for women who weren't quite that attractive. So, in terms of strictly value, I guess that one does make a little bit of sense. And hey, let's face it, $40 versus the $300 or $400 that she claims that she was going to charge him. Let's face it, if they were trying to negotiate the price down that low, then it might end up being the first act of fiscal responsibility in the history of the Obama administration. Small victories, I don't know. And hey, at least this hooker looks a little bit better than the last hooker that the Obama administration put in front of the American public.
She's an easy lover. She'll get a hold on you, believe it.
Jeez. Okay, I tell you what. I'll make you a deal. Here's $40 so that I don't have to sleep with Sandra Fluke, okay? I'll gladly pay you $40 so that she doesn't come anywhere near my boudoir, all right? I'm having a little fun with this, obviously. And while things like the Secret Service scandal down in Colombia and the recent GSA scandal, where they're wasting taxpayer money in Vegas and doing all sorts of little videos where they're professing some disdain for the typical American taxpayer. Well, those things seem pretty insignificant in and of themselves, and even humorous to a significant degree, while they are fodder for the joke writers of the late-night talk shows, I do think that such scandals, insignificant as they might be, humorous as they might be, are still, at least in a small way, illustrative of a larger problem. Both of these issues show a callous disregard for the taxpayers. Those involved are engaging in such actions because, frankly, they think they can get away with it. That, the American people will never know, and if they do know, then, well, they can't really get rid of them immediately, and, they'll probably go on to something else, and it really won't be that big of a deal. And that is the systemic issue that naturally arises with any sort of overgrown, massive government. You see, because government is not beholden to free market principles, at least not entirely, and not to the extent that businesses must be, those who are employed in the public sector are often disconnected from the wishes and the ideas and the demands of the public in a way that private sector employees simply cannot be. When you think about why the mail doesn't get delivered on time, or why the DMV person is rude to you when you go down there and the lines are slowed down at the DMV, The reason those things happen is because there's no free market incentive to make those processes run any more efficiently. So it doesn't matter if the DMV lady scowls at you or if it takes you 3 hours to get through the line, because where else are you going to go? You can't really go to a competing DMV somewhere, can you? There's no reason for them to do it any better, and she's probably going to have her job anyway, no matter how satisfied or unsatisfied the customers are. But on the other hand, if you don't like a business or a business does not do the job for you that you expect, you can cut ties with that business almost immediately and patronize their competitors, well, really the same day if you like. Businesses in a free market know this. And at least for the successful businesses, they take this into account into their decision making. They're a lot more reflexive and reactive when problems and things like this come about. You don't have to come up with some sort of scandal and hope that things get put back into order. You know that either they will be put back into order or the business will go out of business. Can't really say that about a government. Think for a second if a private security firm had been found to have been engaging in such hanky-panky down in Colombia. There likely would have been severe free market consequences. You know, the company in charge would have had to discipline those employees a lot more quickly and really do a lot more damage control, or better yet, make sure that such things could not have happened to begin with. To have had such supervision to prevent such things from occurring, because if they didn't, the competing security firms could have always used that as leverage to take business away from them, and they often would. We see that every day in almost every type of business. Likewise with the GSA, such callous disregard for the public, if they were a private business, would have been punished almost immediately by a rash of customers leaving and going elsewhere in the free market. But in a government job, you're more isolated from the consequences of the public. You don't have to be nearly as responsive because they can't leave you that day and go to your competitor. They can vote you out of office, I guess, or vote those who employed you out of office, but that can take 2 or 3 or 4 years, and by that time they might have even forgotten about whatever your scandal was to begin with. You can more easily get away with it, to use the air quotes. You don't have that connection to wasting the public's money the way that the GSA did, because such waste doesn't negatively impact your future if you're in the public sector. And if you're in the public sector, at least in theory, there's always more tax dollars on the way for you to play with, so why be a good steward of the tax dollars that you're already dealing with? Well, there are very few and specific things that we need a government to handle. You know, things like the military and the court system and the protection of property rights and some very specific things like that. Other than those things, we really don't need a government for a whole lot when you get right down and think about it. But instead, this natural human reaction that human beings, whoever you are, that human beings have when disconnected from public demand. Again, something that's present in all of us, regardless of political party, regardless of any other identifiable characteristic. That's something innate that we all have, that if our feet are not held to the fire, we will get a little lazy. We will get a little fat. We will try to take advantage of whatever situation we're in. But you see, an overgrown and bloated government facilitates, exacerbates, and prolongs this type of lazy behavior, this type of live high on the hog with no consequence behavior. And it's exactly why we need to cut government, particularly at the federal level. But yet, we have an incumbent president running for re-election right now who consistently talks about instead growing government. His answers to every issue, things like economics and healthcare, just to give you 2 examples, his answer to all of those issues is to grow the government in order to play a bigger role in, air quotes again, solving these problems. But because government is, by definition, less responsive to public demand than the free market is, then government is logically one of the worst avenues to actually solve important issues. It's humorous to see the stuff that happened with the GSA and the Secret Service, and we can poke fun at it, and certainly I've done my share of it. And we can even poke fun at the DMV and the Postal Service and all of that, and we all have little jokes we make from time to time. But will it be so humorous to see a similar lack of responsiveness and a lack of connectivity to the American public by a government that controls your health care? Will it be so humorous to see a government that is at odds with the needs of the business community and they add hurdles for business to negotiate instead of removing those hurdles, thereby potentially affecting your job? In those cases, it's not so humorous. It's not humorous at all. Instead, it's destructive. We could spend hours, we could even spend days discussing government waste and folly within both parties throughout American history, particularly recent American history. But the bottom line is that it is the nature of government itself to facilitate such a system where waste and non-responsiveness is not punished, but is instead rewarded with longevity. There's not a way to create a big government and do it well. It cannot be done. Because government in and of itself facilitates, frankly, the worst aspects of human nature. This is why government, to the extent that we need it at all, must be as small and streamlined as possible. And yet President Obama doesn't talk about making the government smaller, does he? He talks about expanding that government and letting it play an even bigger role in our lives. Well, if that happens, hookers in Colombia won't be the only ones getting... Okay, I'll pardon my French. That's it for this week. This is America's Evil Genius. We'll see you next week.